Hey, how's it going? My name has been Arbour, and we're going to be making a simple 2D background using Photoshop. You can throw this right into a game in Unity, or just do it for funsies like me, but at the end, we're going to have an amazing piece. Let's go ahead and open Photoshop. Alright, once we have Photoshop open, we're going to create a new canvas, and this canvas is 2560 by 1440p, and that's going to give you a nice 4K image. That's going to be a nice starting point. So now I have created this color palette here, and I recommend having a color palette because that way you know what colors to pick from, and I really don't like the swatches tool inside of Photoshop. I find it really clunky to use. What we've got here is a nice gradient, so we're going to go from our sky to our grass, or maybe our grass to our sky. We'll see. We'll see what we're feeling. We can always switch it up. The awesome part about Photoshop is you're never really set in what you do. Sometimes your color palette doesn't quite get the color you're looking for. So we're going to go ahead and grab a nice purple, light purple here, and create a new layer. And we're going to create a nice set of rolling. Now, I'm using a pen, but if you don't have a pen, that really isn't a worry. I've used a mouse I don't know how many times, and sometimes it's actually more enjoyable because then you actually get into like the nitty gritty and you're not really focused on your drawing. We're going to go ahead and just create a nice, smooth, wavy set of hills back here, just peeking over the horizon. Grab our bucket tool now, go ahead and fill that, just double click it to get rid of that white line there. Create a new layer now. We're just going to do this over and over again, maybe like 4 or 5 times. Just slowly going down the gradient. Alright, I think that's going to be good for our rolling hills. So now let's create a new layer and let's create our foreground now. The stuff that's like right in front of the camera that's supposed to be super dark. So let's grab a nice dark red now. Go ahead and just draw it overlapping slightly. I like to cover up the corners here. What it's going to do is it's going to kind of separate and create some depth inside of our drawing. Go ahead and fill that now. See what I mean? You can tell which is actually like the stuff that the quote unquote player would walk on if we were doing a game. This is going to kind of separate that image. Let's go ahead and fill in the background just so that we can kind of get more of a feel for the atmosphere. This drawing. So let's grab a really, really light purple. It's okay if it's not on your palette. Go ahead and fill that background now. Yeah, do you see it? Maybe, honestly, I'm feeling a little bit lighter. That's good. That is good. Now we are going to go ahead and grab our gradient tool now. We're going to go on to the actual layer now, and we're going to go ahead and color select the layer behind it. And we're just going to drag that up. There we go. That's looking better. Whoops. Okay, if you mess up again. All about feeling it. Yeah, there we go. Maybe. There we go. Grab another gradient tool now. Just going to do this for the rest of the layers. And now what I like to do on this last layer is instead of going up, just kind of pull it down ever so slight. We're actually going to create a new layer for this one. We're going to go ahead and create another clipping mask. We're just going to drag it down. Just on the top. Almost like creating a little bit of fog. There we go. Now it's just kind of shaded at the top. Go ahead and merge that layer now. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and do a inner shadow on all of these layers, except for the foreground. Shadow, just kind of play with it. Your inner shadow should get shallower the farther you go back because obviously it's less visible. And that's a little bit harsh, so we'll go with like 23% on that. We're just going to go through all of these layers now. So shadow, maybe like 15%. This one, 12 or 13. 11, that works too. This one, go with 6. This last one should be barely visible, way off in the distance. Percent looked good. A little particular. There we go. 1% even better. See how it kind of gets darker or lighter the farther back you go? Creates more depth inside of the image. And honestly, I think this foreground needs to be a little bit darker. Let's go ahead and darken that up. Alright, there we go. What we can do is we're just going to go ahead and color pick our orange here. We're going to grab our ellipses tool. We're just going to go ahead and hold shift. Create a nice circle. Like that. Go ahead and grab our gradient tool now. Color pick that orange. Now we can just go ahead and slowly drag around here. Create a nice little sun or moon, whatever you're feeling. I like going in this circle. This is going to be hidden behind the hill, so it doesn't really matter. Select that. We're going to have to redo that. Make sure you do it on another layer. Go ahead and go layer, new, layer. And we're going to do this all over. Again, it's Photoshop. We have infinite tries, so that's the awesome thing. Then we can go ahead and deselect this. Then going to go ahead and drag this right down to the bottom. Make it just peek up. Make sure you can see a little bit of the unshaded area. It just, again, adds some depth. Click off that. I wouldn't let me deselect. There we go. I'm gonna move this down. Then we're gonna go ahead and add an outer glow here. I'm just gonna play with this. We're gonna go ahead and grab this orange because that isn't exactly the orange we're using. Then we're going to make it slightly less opaque. And we are going its little ring, give it a little more opacity. Go ahead and hide your color splotch, just double check. I like the way that looks. We can go ahead and just drag this right up to the top now. That way we can actually see the colors we're working with. Now what we want to do is create something for the player or the viewer to actually look at. So I'm thinking we should make some nice little trees, and it's a good idea to pick colors that kind of will stand out. So we're going to use our orange here. That's why I have this orange color. I'm going to create a new layer now. Place this layer kind of down. There we go. Actually, before we do the trees, let's go ahead and make some bushes. Go ahead and grab our color selector, grab this red, darken it just a tad. Not as dark as the foreground, but darker than the ground. And this layer is going to be below the ground. Just hide that for now. Photoshop crashing on me? It was. Alright. And we're just going to create some nice little bushes. Whatever you're feeling. Just make these funky. This is why I like using a pen though. These curvy lines are a lot easier. But a little tip is that if you are making this using a mouse, something easy you can do to actually make this process easier is just by turning this, like I even have the smoothing turned up to 100% while I'm using I even have smoothing on with a pen. I just find it makes painting a lot easier. Then we're just going to go ahead and fill in all of these areas with our paint bucket tool. Go ahead and put the foreground back. And see how much depth that adds just using that? Everything is about depth when you're working in 2D. Depth and colors. Now let's go ahead and add an inner shadow here. We'll make it a little bit darker, a lot darker, like that. Yeah, that's nice. Look okay. And now, again, everything is about depth. Let's add another inner shadow, but this time, we're actually going to make it white. We are going to turn the size all the way down to 0. Put the distance to something like just barely off the edge. Turn the size up just a touch, and turn the opacity down. Kind of play with these until you find something you like. What we're doing is we're kind of creating a 3D edge, so it kind of is giving like Paper Mario vibes, almost. That's what I'm feeling. And that's kind of adding like the bounce light. That is good. That's good. That almost looks like clay. Go ahead and select that. Now let's create another layer. This layer, I'm gonna add a pop of color. So we're gonna use that orange color now. We're just gonna draw some really simple berries. Oh, that's nice. Do you see how much those stand out compared to the rest of the background? Sprinkle these around. Feeling one right there. Yes. All right. And look at that. Already it is. Mwah. We can go ahead and merge those layers now. Just keep everything nice and connected. Now let's go ahead and draw some trees. Now I don't want to fill this thing with trees because I kind of like my trees to stand out. You can go ahead and just draw a really nice tree. You can do simple triangles, or you can go for a little bit more of a wavy effect. I actually think I'm going to go with the wavy effect. So I guess I'm going to do a time lapse of me drawing a dead tree, or maybe it's going to be alive. Not sure yet. It's all about feeling the process out. Alright, and that's a pretty good tree for me. I'm pretty happy with that. I can always come back to it. Go ahead and merge those two layers. But again, look at the depth that I created in the image, right? I used this nice orange that makes it stand out. Then I darkened it up on the edge here to kind of create 3D warp. The trees or the branches in the background, I wanted to separate it, so I used a darker orange. Go ahead and add some shadows now. Get a new layer. That is going to be on that layer right there. Go ahead and grab some black. Wait. Maybe not that layer. Maybe the layer above it. Create some nice little black shadows. Kind of work with the way that the tree would look. It doesn't always have to be perfect. In fact, it's never going to be perfect. But that's okay because we're going to make this less visible, and we're also going to add a nice little motion blur. Lower the opacity first. Go ahead and clean up that line so that it's not on tree. Then we can go to filters, blur, and add a motion blur. And we're gonna have to go ahead and reset this a little bit so the sun's kind of coming from that angle right there. Let's go ahead and reduce how much blur there is. Kind of play with this until something feels right. That was actually quite good, but yeah, there we go. Let's actually go ahead and make that even less opaque. Perfect. We're gonna go ahead and do the same thing for these bushes now. Let's go ahead and add a shadow. Grab a paintbrush tool now. Whoops. This layer. Kind of work with what we've got here. Again, in no way does it need to be perfect. Just go ahead and connect this up. And we're probably gonna have to clean up this line. so that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and fill that with a paint bucket now. And we're gonna go ahead and set the opacity down. Clean that up a little bit. All about feeling. If you don't want to clean up your lines, you don't really have to. It should look a little bit better if it's not overlapping. This is all gonna get blurred out anyways. There we go. I don't like dropping the opacity as much as I want until I've put the motion blur on. You can always create a new motion blur though, because you never know. The sun's gonna hit the same way. In this case, it'd be more like that. A little more distance, maybe. Yeah, that's pretty good. Set the opacity. Got our foreground back. Clean that up. You can always do touch-ups like this. Really shouldn't be on the bushes. In fact, actually. More work than it's worth. We're actually going to put something over top of the shadow. Not a good line. Alright, that's good enough for me, because we're going to add something over the shadow. Create a new layer now. And we're going to grab our brush. And I have a custom brush here that I want to use. That is going to be this grass brush. Let's change these shape dynamics here. Angle jitter up a little bit. Roundness jitter. Size jitter. Nope. Actually, just angle jitter. 25% should be pretty good. Turn the size down. That. Yeah, that's good. Let's actually just go ahead and grab this color here. We're on a new layer. Perfect. We're just going to go ahead and add some nice little grass bits right over this shadow. Honestly, I don't even know if I'm feeling the shadow. I don't think I'm feeling the shadow. When we go ahead and merge this, you're actually going to see the inner shadow connects to the grass, and just look at how much better that looks. I don't even think we're going to worry about the shadow coming off the bushes. Let's go ahead and add some clouds. And that is actually going to bring us kind of the end of this drawing. Go ahead and bring that down here. Switch up those colors. Let's grab a nice, hard, round brush. I'm going to squiggle over this. Fill this in. Maybe you want to have one kind of creeping over the sun here. Hide that so I can actually see. Yeah, that's looking good. The same thing as the shadow. We're going to go ahead and add a motion blur on this. And make sure that's at about 0 degrees. 4 degrees also works. I like that. That's good. I also just kind of like turning the opacity down a little bit. There we go. And look at that. Look at that. That took us less than 20 minutes. And this is honestly very solid. The only thing I really want to do now is just add some texture. I'm going to go ahead and put my pen down now. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a texture that I have saved to my computer. Just a nice old paper texture. And this is just going to kind of make the image look. This is just gonna kind of make the image look a little bit more worn out, because right now it's looking really, really clean. And if that's the aesthetic you're going for, by all means, awesome. We're actually gonna go ahead and merge all of the visible layers. So click on a visible layer, that would help. Merge visible. Now we have our entire image in a single image. Now, if you're making a game, you wouldn't really want to do this, because then what would happen is you can do parallaxing, where the background moves slower than the foreground. But for now, we'll say that it's good, because this is just kind of like concept art. We're going to go ahead and turn this into an overlay, and we're just going to go ahead and turn the opacity down so we feel something like, yeah, maybe something like that. Perfect. Look how much better that looks already. And the last thing that we want to do is create a sun ray. I'm going to go ahead and color pick our orange now that we used for the sun. And again, very, very similar to the shadows. I'm just going to draw some sun rays, just in every direction you're kind of feeling. Just like that. Then we're going to go to filter, blur, blur, motion blur, turn this way up. Where you're feeling it, I'm feeling like something like that is pretty nice. Yeah, maybe a touch. You don't really want to have any hard lines for this. That's good. Yes. We're gonna drop the opacity down. Yeah, just like that. And there you have it. That is our simple 2D background using Photoshop. Just go ahead and save this. Name this. We're gonna name it Simple Orange Hills. What a nice name. And as all pieces of artwork, we're just gonna go ahead and sign this. I actually have my signature just in a little thing here. Let's go ahead and reset those shape dynamics. Whoop, there we go. And turn the size down. Create a new layer. Perfect. And I like to sign in orange. Why is there a big squiggle? At what point did I squiggle? There we go. I think when I was setting my pen down, it must have touched. Alright, and let's go ahead and create a new layer for my signature. Boop. There we go. That is our 2D background. Throw this into Unity if you didn't merge the layers. I mean, if you just want a background as a wallpaper, you can do that as well. I really like the aesthetic. I've got quite a few others like this. This was my first kind of Photoshop tutorial, kind of going for a Bob Ross theme, the calming ASMR aspect. So I apologize if it wasn't that good. I was really focused on just kind of getting the artwork out. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And yeah, remember to drink water.